Friends, I've lived a long time on this earth, made movies about justice, courage, and what it means to face death. But I'll be honest with you, I never really understood what it meant to die until one quiet night at my ranch. The sun was melting down behind the hills, painting the sky gold and crimson, and I sat there alone on the porch thinking about the years that had come and gone. I thought about the people I had lost, the choices I had made, and the moments I could never get back. For all my wisdom and all my miles, something inside of me felt incomplete, like I had seen everything this world could offer, but still didn't know the truth about what waits beyond it. That night, I found myself praying, not the kind of prayer you say out of habit, but the kind that comes from the core of your soul. God, I said, how long do we really stay after this life ends? Do our souls linger? Do we still feel love? I didn't expect an answer, but the moment those words left my lips, something changed. The air around me grew still, like time itself had taken a breath. And then, there he was, Jesus Christ, standing beside me. Not in blazing light or heavenly thunder, but quietly, humbly, like a friend who'd known me all my life. His presence didn't frighten me, it filled me with peace. He looked at me and said, "Clint, life isn't measured by the roles you play or the fame you gain. It's measured by how deeply you love, how freely you forgive, and how faithfully you trust me." His words sank deep into me, deeper than any script or speech I'd ever memorized. He showed me my life like a film reel, moments I was proud of, and others I wished I could edit out. But instead of shame, I felt mercy. He wasn't condemning me, he was reminding me that grace had always been there, even when I didn't see it. When I opened my eyes, I was back on that porch. The wind moved again, the stars flickered back to life, and I realized I hadn't just dreamed it. God had given me a glimpse of eternity. Since that night, I don't look at life the same way. Every sunrise feels like a second chance. Every person I meet feels like a gift. I used to think death was the end of the story, but now I know it's just the next chapter. And as long as I'm here, I want to live with purpose, love without limit, and keep trusting the one who met me in the quiet of that night and reminded me that this life, every moment of it, is sacred. There are moments in life, friends, when even the strongest hearts grow quiet, when the noise of the world fades, and all you're left with is the sound of your own soul searching for answers. I remember one evening not long ago, sitting alone at my ranch as the sun melted behind the hills. The light was fading, that soft golden glow you only see once a day, and in that stillness I felt an ache that words couldn't reach. I had just lost someone very dear to me, someone who had been a part of my story for so long that their absence left a silence I didn't know how to fill. The house was empty, the laughter was gone, and in that emptiness I began to wonder, where do we go when we leave this world? Does the soul linger somewhere close, watching over those it loved, or does it drift away into some place our hearts can't follow? I thought about the moments we'd shared, the promises we never got to keep, and I whispered into the wind, "Can you still feel me? Do you know how much I miss you?" The air was so still that night, it felt like even creation itself was listening. For the first time in a long time, I felt small, not as a man who had seen the world, but as a child standing before something vast and unknown. And in that moment of grief, my heart did what hearts are meant to do when they've run out of answers. It prayed. "God," I said, "I don't need explanations. I just need to know that love doesn't end, that somehow, somewhere, this connection still lives." And right then, something beautiful happened. I didn't hear a voice from the heavens. I didn't see lightning in the sky, but deep within, there was a warmth, gentle, steady, unmistakable. It was as if God himself leaned close and whispered, "Love never dies, Clint. What I join together in love, death cannot divide." Tears fell, but they weren't the tears of despair anymore. They were tears of peace. I looked up at that sunset, and for the first time, I didn't just see the day ending, I saw a promise being kept. I realized that grief is not the absence of love, it's the proof of it. We grieve deeply because we have loved deeply, and that love is eternal. That night, I stopped asking if my loved one could still feel me. I started thanking God that love, in its purest form, never says goodbye. And friend, if you're sitting in your own sunset moment, wondering if the soul still remembers, let me remind you, heaven is closer than you think, and love is the bridge that never breaks. That night, something inside me broke open. I had carried questions for years, questions about life, death, and what really happens when this body takes its final breath. I'd played tough men, strong men, men who faced the darkness without flinching. But when you've buried someone you love, when the laughter that once filled your home turns into silence, no amount of toughness can quiet the ache in your heart. I remember sitting alone on that porch, the sky stretched wide and silent above me, stars beginning to shimmer one by one. My hands trembled as I whispered the words I hadn't spoken in decades. God, I don't know how to pray anymore, but I need to know. How long do souls remain after death? Do they linger near us? Do they know we still love them? My voice cracked in the stillness, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely exposed, stripped of all pride, all certainty. I didn't expect an answer. I just needed to release the pain. But then, something happened that words can barely hold. The air around me seemed to shift, gentle but powerful, like the hush that falls before dawn. I turned my head, and there he was, Jesus Christ himself, sitting beside me. Not in blazing light or royal robes, but in simple clothes, dusty sandals, the kind of presence that felt both ordinary and infinite. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at me with eyes that carried every sorrow I'd ever felt and every mercy I'd ever been given. When he did speak, his voice wasn't thunder, it was calm, steady, familiar. He said, "Clint, the soul doesn't fade. It is eternal, because love is eternal. Those you've lost are not gone, they're simply home. You can't see them now, but they see you, they remember, they love you still." I sat there frozen, tears blurring my vision, as he placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to understand eternity," he said softly. "You only have to trust that I've already written the next chapter." And in that instant, every fear I had about death melted into peace. The grief was still there, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It had turned into hope. I blinked, and he was gone, but the warmth of his touch stayed. I looked up at the stars again, and for the first time, they didn't feel distant. They felt like windows into forever. Since that night, I've never prayed the same way. I don't ask for proof anymore. I thank him for presence. I don't fear death. I honor life. Because once you've sat in the quiet with Jesus, once you've heard him speak to your broken heart, you know love doesn't end where life does. It only begins again in the arms of eternity. As I sat there in that holy stillness, the stars above whispering secrets only heaven could know, Jesus looked at me with such gentleness that time itself seemed to pause. His presence carried peace so deep it felt like my very soul exhaled for the first time in years. I had asked him what happens to the soul after death, and he smiled a soft, knowing smile and said, "Clint, the soul doesn't leave right away. It stays for a time." His words rolled through the air like a melody, wrapping around my heart. "There's no set number of days or hours," he continued. "It depends on the love left behind. You see, love is powerful. It connects heaven and earth. When someone you love passes, their soul lingers close, drawn by your love, by your tears, by your prayers. They wait not because they're trapped, but because love keeps them near. They wait until the living are ready to let go, to release them in peace." I sat there, stunned, tears streaming down my face, realizing that my grief wasn't just my burden, it was a bridge keeping my loved one close. "So, you mean they stay because of us?" I asked quietly. Jesus nodded. "Yes, Clint. When you grieve with love, they feel it. When you remember them with joy, they rise higher. The soul knows when it's time to move on, when the heart of the one left behind finally says, 'It's okay. You can rest now.' That's when they are released fully into my light." His words struck me like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. I saw flashes of my memories, the laughter, the sorrow, the moments I'd replayed over and over, unwilling to let them fade. And I realized, all that time, their soul had been near, waiting not for me to forget, but to forgive, to let peace take the place of pain. Grief, he said, is love with nowhere to go. But when you hand that love to me, it finds its way home. My heart broke and healed all at once. The burden I'd carried for so long felt lighter. I looked out over the horizon, where the first light of dawn began to bloom, and for the first time since their passing, I whispered, "It's okay. You can go." A warmth filled the air, a peace too deep to describe, and I knew their soul had finally crossed fully into the arms of heaven. Since that night, I've understood death doesn't sever love, it sanctifies it. The ones we lose aren't gone, they're simply waiting for us to find peace. And when we do, both heaven and earth breathe a little easier, because love has done what it was always meant to do, set the soul free. In that moment of divine stillness, as the moonlight brushed across the fields and the night carried the scent of earth and eternity, Jesus looked at me with eyes that held both compassion and eternity itself. He said, "Clint, love is the most powerful force in the universe. It's the heartbeat of heaven. But down here on earth, love and grief walk hand in hand. That's the great paradox." I listened, every word sinking into places in my heart I didn't know were still aching. "When someone you love leaves this world," he continued softly, "the bond of love doesn't break, it stretches between heaven and earth. That's why you still feel them, why their memory lingers like a song that never stops playing. But that same love can hold them close to this world if it turns into grief that refuses to heal. The deeper the sorrow, the tighter the tie. Love keeps them near, but pain keeps them bound." I felt a lump rise in my throat. I had spent so many nights replaying old moments, holding on to every regret, every what if, thinking it honored their memory. But now I understood it wasn't just love I was carrying, it was anguish. "So how do we let them go?" I whispered. Jesus smiled, and the light around him seemed to pulse with warmth. "You don't let go of love, Clint," he said gently. "You let go of the pain. You trade sorrow for gratitude, guilt for grace. You thank me for the time you had, instead of mourning the time you lost. When love becomes gratitude, the soul is released to rise higher. They are never gone, they simply move into the fullness of the love that created them." I looked down at my hands, trembling with the weight of revelation. I realized that every tear I had shed was seen, every ache understood. And yet, in that moment, I felt peace, the kind that doesn't erase pain, but transforms it. Jesus touched my shoulder and said, "The ones you love are not lost to you. They're just waiting in a higher place, where love is pure and complete. When you choose peace over pain, you set both your hearts free." I looked up at the sky, and it seemed brighter somehow, as if heaven had leaned a little closer. Since that night, I've learned to love differently, not with fear of losing, but with joy in remembering, because love that clings keeps us in yesterday, but love that releases lifts us toward forever. And when gratitude takes the place of grief, heaven no longer feels far away, it feels like home. As I sat there under that vast starlit sky, listening to the voice of Jesus flow like calm water through my weary soul, he began to reveal something that changed the way I saw love forever. "Clint," he said gently, "love is the greatest gift I've given humanity, but it comes with a cost. It's both a comfort and a chain." I looked at him trying to understand, and he smiled with that eternal kindness that seemed to hold the universe together. "When someone you love passes on," he continued, "their soul often lingers, drawn close by the love they shared. They stay because they care, because they still feel your tears, still hear your prayers, still long to comfort the hearts that ache for them. But every time they reach toward you, they also feel the weight of your sorrow. They are caught between joy and pain, cherishing your love, yet burdened by your grief." His words struck deep, and suddenly I could feel it, the delicate thread between the living and the departed, woven from the fabric of love itself. I had always thought holding on was noble, that remembering every detail and carrying the ache proved how deeply I cared. But now I saw that love wasn't meant to imprison, it was meant to free. When you cling to pain, Jesus said, you chain the soul in longing, but when you release them in faith, you give them wings. You say, "Go in peace, my love, and rest in his light." That act of release is not forgetting, it's trusting. It's believing that my love for them is greater than your sorrow. I could feel tears welling up, but this time they weren't just tears of loss, they were tears of understanding. I realized that releasing someone you love doesn't mean you stop loving them, it means you love them enough to let them be at peace. The bond of love, he whispered, doesn't fade when the body dies. It only changes form. Love that releases is love perfected. I sat in silence, letting those words wash over me, and for the first time I whispered, "Lord, I let them go. Take care of them as you always have." A soft wind stirred, warm and tender, and I knew the soul I'd been holding so tightly had finally risen free. Since that night I've understood something sacred. Love is not measured by how tightly we hold on, but by how faithfully we let go. The greatest act of love isn't keeping someone near, it's setting them free and trusting that the same God who carried them through life will carry them through eternity. That night, as the air around me shimmered with that holy stillness, Jesus turned his gaze toward me, eyes filled with both strength and tenderness, and said, "Clint, there's something you need to understand about letting go." His voice carried the weight of eternity, yet it was soft enough to quiet every storm inside me. You see, honoring those who've gone before you isn't about holding on to the pain. It's about living the kind of life that keeps their love alive. Every smile you give, every kindness you show, every sunrise you choose to greet with hope, that's how you honor them. You don't keep their memory through sorrow, you keep it through joy. I felt something stir in me, something warm and freeing. "But Lord," I whispered, "it hurts to let go." He nodded gently. "I know it does, Clint. Love always costs something, but true love trusts me enough to release. When you keep reliving their last moment, when you drown in the grief of what's gone, their soul feels that ache too. They can't move fully into my light while you're still calling them back with your tears. But when you say the words, when you lift your face and whisper, 'I'll be all right, go to your peace,' that is the moment heaven opens. You free them to rise, and you free your own heart to heal." I sat there, the firelight flickering, my breath catching in the weight of what he said. My mind replayed every goodbye I had never spoken, every time I'd wished for one more moment. And in that stillness, I finally understood letting go isn't about forgetting, it's about trusting that love doesn't need proximity to remain real. Jesus smiled and said, "You were never meant to carry grief like a chain. You were meant to turn it into gratitude, into compassion, into strength for others. That's how you bring heaven closer to earth." I looked up at the night sky, the stars glowing brighter than I'd ever seen them, and I whispered, "I'll be all right. Go to your peace." In that instant, I felt it a soft release, a breath from heaven itself. The weight lifted, and in its place came a deep, quiet joy. I knew then that love doesn't end at the grave, it transforms. Those we've lost are never gone, they're waiting, radiant and whole, beyond the veil of time. And each day we live with love and purpose. Each time we choose faith over fear, we send a little light their way. That night I didn't just say goodbye. I said, "Thank you," and heaven answered with peace. As I sat there in the glow of that eternal presence, I felt the weight of mystery pressing close, and I said softly, "Lord, does everyone experience this? Is this truth only for those who believe?" Jesus smiled, and his eyes, gentle, knowing, filled with light older than time, met mine. "Clint," he said, "truth belongs to no single people or creed. It is the heartbeat of creation itself. What I'm showing you now isn't bound by walls, temples, or names. It's written into the soul of every person who's ever drawn breath." His voice was calm but powerful, like the sound of hope itself. "You see, love is the language of heaven, and every soul understands it. You don't have to speak my name to be touched by it. You don't have to hold the right doctrine to live by it. When you love deeply, when you give, when you forgive, when you lift another from despair, you are walking in my truth, whether you realize it or not. I sat there stunned, feeling a peace I couldn't explain. So even those who don't believe? I asked. He nodded. Even them. Because love isn't earned, Clint, it's given. The souls of non-believers, too, linger near the ones they love. They're drawn not by religion, but by relationship, the love between a mother and child, between friends, between two hearts that truly cared. That love carries across every boundary humans have ever made. Love governs the soul's journey. It is both the light that calls and the path that leads home. I felt tears rise again, not from sorrow this time, but from awe. Then faith, I whispered, isn't just belief, it's how we live. Jesus smiled wider, that radiant smile that felt like sunrise after a lifetime of night. Exactly. Faith endures through mystery. You won't understand everything, but you can still live rightly. Do good not because you're promised reward, but because love asks it of you. Treat every soul as sacred because every soul carries my spark. When your time comes, it won't be your religion that opens the door, it will be your love. Those words sank deep into me, reshaping everything I thought I knew. The stars above seemed closer now, not faraway fires, but living witnesses to something eternal. And as the wind brushed across my face, I realized heaven wasn't just somewhere beyond, it was already within every act of kindness, every moment of grace, every time a heart chooses love over fear. Since that night, I've stopped worrying about who's right and started focusing on what's true, that love in its purest form is divine. It's the one truth that binds us all, and the only thing we take with us when we cross into eternity. That night, with the stars glimmering like the eyes of heaven and the air still humming with his presence, I finally understood what Jesus had been teaching me. Love was never meant to be a chain, it was meant to be a bridge. I felt his words still echoing in my chest. When you release them in love, you set both hearts free. So I took a deep breath, and for the first time, I spoke aloud to the one I had lost. My voice trembled, but my heart was steady. I'll be all right, I whispered into the quiet. You can go to your peace now. The moment those words left my lips, something beautiful happened. The air seemed to shimmer, a soft warmth wrapped around me, and I felt a lightness in my chest as though a gentle hand had lifted a heavy stone I'd been carrying for years. It wasn't sorrow anymore, it was peace, pure and clean. I could almost feel my loved one smiling, rising, finally free from the weight of my grief, and as I sat there with tears on my face, Jesus turned to me, his expression radiant with both joy and compassion. That's it, Clint, he said. You've done what every heart must learn to do. You've turned pain into peace, grief into grace. You've chosen love over loss. Remember this moment, because it's not just for you, it's for the world. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them they don't have to grieve in chains. Tell them that letting go doesn't mean forgetting, it means trusting that love never dies. His words filled me like sunlight fills the dawn. I wanted to hold on to him forever, but I could feel that he was preparing to leave, and somehow I knew it was right. Lord, I said softly, how will they believe me? He smiled and placed his hand over my heart. They'll feel it, he said, because truth doesn't just live in words, it lives in love. And then, just like that, he was gone. The wind stirred, the stars burned brighter, and I was left sitting in the silence that wasn't empty anymore. It was full, alive, sacred. I looked up at the heavens and whispered, "Thank you." That night I learned that death isn't an ending, it's an awakening. Our loved ones don't vanish, they rise. And we, the living, honor them not by clinging to what was, but by embracing what is with gratitude, faith, and love that never lets go. So now, whenever I speak of that night, I tell people this: you can release your sorrow and still keep your love, because in God's hands, even goodbye becomes a beginning. Now that I'm in my 80s, people often ask me if I'm afraid of dying, and I tell them with a smile, not anymore. You see, I used to think of death as this dark wall at the end of the road, the final curtain drop after the show was over. But that night, when heaven touched earth and Jesus sat beside me, I learned it's not an ending at all. It's a doorway, a homecoming, a continuation of love in a higher form. I used to look at the years slipping by and feel the weight of what I'd lost, the people I couldn't hold anymore, the moments I wished I could relive. But now I see life differently. Every sunrise feels like a blessing, every heartbeat a reminder that I'm still part of something eternal. Death doesn't take life away, it completes it. It's the moment when all our love, all our learning, all our living finally come full circle into God's perfect peace. And friends, if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: don't waste your days fearing what's ahead or grieving what's behind. Live fully right where you are. Laugh a little louder. Forgive a little faster. Tell people you love them while you can, because every act of love echoes into eternity. And if you're carrying grief tonight, if someone you loved has already crossed over, hear this from a man who's been touched by both worlds. Don't let sorrow be your only language. Speak peace instead. Look toward heaven and say, I'll be all right. Go to your rest. I'll keep living and I'll keep loving. That simple act releases them and frees your heart to heal. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving, it means you trust love enough to last beyond sight. I used to think the greatest gift we could give the ones we love was our time. But now I know the greatest gift is our release. When you let them go with grace, you give them wings. When you keep living with joy, you honor the light they left behind. So as I sit here watching the sun sink behind these old hills, I'm not afraid of what's next. I've seen a glimpse of it, and it's more beautiful than words can tell. One day, when my time comes, I won't say goodbye. I'll just whisper, see you soon. Because love doesn't end, it transforms. And that, my friends, is the final truth. To love deeply, to live gratefully, and to let go freely. That's how you prepare for heaven.